Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Positive Leadership Leading Towards Sustainable Performance. My name is Martina and I'm the moderator of this webinar on behalf of Access MBA Focus. Our speaker today is Johannes Claeys. He is the director of the Executive MBA program at IESEG School of Management. He holds a PhD in Management, Tilburg University, Netherlands, and teaches in the fields of management, leadership, strategy, and ethics. We will be joined by Madam Alazy Reis from the admissions team for the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So you can ask any questions related to getting admitted to this triple accredited executive MBA program. We will be able to send your questions during the entire webinar by typing them in the questions, and our speaker will take time to give you an answer. But first, let's check the sound. Could you please write in the chat box which country are you joining us from? Okay, I think that everything is set, and we can start with the presentation now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be with you here. I heard that we have a lot of different nationalities, more than 400 people registered for this seminar. That means that the interest for leadership is on the rise. So also from my side, I'm happy to be here with you, and let's make an interesting hour and a half. Okay. What will we do today? I'll give you a brief introduction. I will start with actually the very one question that I start every leadership course with, every seminar. It's a very important question, and I really want you to think about it. Ask yourself, why should anyone be led by you? That's the most crucial question. You all had some leadership experience when I heard how many years of work experience you had. So ask yourself that question. Why should anyone be led by you? What do you have to offer? Why should people follow you? And the second thing, when I give a course, an executive course or a webinar, it's always the same rule. If I ask a question to you, you have the same right to answer that question or to ask that question to me. So I'm going to answer that question myself. Why should anyone be led by me? I'll briefly introduce my school, and I will give the outline for the webinar. So, why should anyone be led by me? Well, I just show you three pictures. On the left side, you see the slightly younger version of me. I think I was 20 years old, and I was in the mountains in Italy. And on the other two pictures, you see me with a group of executives in the mountains. And on the left side, this was my first leadership experience. That was in the beginning. I was interested in going to the mountains. I was interested in literally peak performance to get to the top as fast as possible. And one day I was invited to go with a bunch of young kids. And then I discovered that I had a greater joy in helping other people to the top, getting other people to reach that difficult moment and celebrate it with each other. And if I could contribute to that victory, it really made me happy. And it was one of my first leadership experiences. And after many years of study, of working with and in companies, doing consulting, and now also as a leadership developer, as a professor, I know go to the same mountains, but also with my executives, because I'm still convinced that the hardship of a mountain, the unexpected events that arise during a trip like that, they are exactly preparing you for the challenges that you will face in corporate life. Also, the fact that you have the ability to take some distance, get away from your own work environment, and yet be challenged in what you do. So just to tell, this is not a coincidence that I'm starting with this. I'm already telling you about my own leadership narrative. What was my first leadership experience? Just like I would like you to think about your own leadership experience. What was the first time that you were responsible for a group? Think back. Take a trip down memory lane. Perhaps you were captain of the football team. Perhaps you were president of I don't know, the book club, whatever. Don't think only of leadership as a title or a function that one day you will deserve. No, leadership is fundamentally connected with influencing people. And just think about that for a moment. How much and in what occasions you influence other people. So it also reminds us of sharing a narrative, being able to tell a narrative. And leadership is not about just only the pragmatical things. No, it's talking and bringing a bigger picture of who you are. I'll come back to that. So why should anyone be led by me? You heard it. I'm a leadership professor. I'm a leadership developer. I have 15 years of board experience. And every day I learn from my executive participants. So why should anyone be led by me? Why should anyone be led by you? Just to tell you, where do I come from? This is my hometown on the left. So I live close to Bruges, and on the right side, you see where I work in Lille and in Paris. And like the introduction said, I'm part of IÉSEG, of the Executive MBA, having a lot of different executive programs. I will not go into the details of the school. So what are we going to do together? We already had the brief introduction where I asked you very important questions. This is how I teach. If you expected to have all the answers from me, no, you can expect to have a lot of questions from me too. So, but what am I, what is on the agenda? What will we do together? So the first thing is we have to understand and define leadership. It's a very complex construct. So we have to understand why is it so complex, and only if we understand and respect complexity, we can come to clarity. If you go straight away to clarity, then you'll oversimplify, and we will see that's often the case. Then you see versions or explanations on leadership that really makes no sense. So first, let us try to understand this. What is leadership? What are we talking about? Okay, first point. Second point is, well, how do you develop it? You have to understand leadership before you can talk about leadership development. So second part is devoted to leadership development. And then third part depends on how much time I took. Let's look to the future. What is here? What is coming our way? What are the trends? What do we see in the leadership landscape? The evolutions. Okay, so these are the things I have in store for you. I hope this is what you expected. And like the introduction said, I'm more than happy to answer to your questions. Okay, allons-y. So, like I said, we have to understand leadership, and we have to understand the complexity of that construct. Okay, and the first question is, do we care about leadership? And let's see, what about corporate world? Does the corporate world care about leadership? Well, apparently, if you look to the amount of money that they spend, yes, they do care. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. In the United States alone, annually, $14 billion is spent on leadership. I mean, during the most severe crises, people kept on investing in leadership and leadership development. If there's a survey of McKinsey that asked 500 executives, okay, but what is truly your priority? What is on your mind? What leadership is top 3 elements. So companies do invest. They think it's important. They want to create a leadership pipeline. What about academia? Well, if I see the number of research grants, the number of research projects, if I see the research output, looking into what is leadership development, how can we measure it? There's a lot of work done in the last 20 years. There's even an exponential growth of the leadership literature. You have your own leadership journals, top journals. They reserve quite some time for leadership development. What about business schools? Well, I've been around in a couple of business schools. I've been teaching across the globe. And if I look to my own school and if I look to the competition, well, if there's one thing that they have in common, all in common, is that the number of leadership courses, leadership development programs that are offered throughout programs in the different programs of the school, that is on the rise. The number of questions, hey, Johannes, we're thinking about our own leadership center, you would be surprised how many schools that are developing it, refining it. A lot of business schools are asking, how can I leave my brand? What is my contribution to the leadership that we need? How do we develop that? So we did that in our school, but in a lot of different business schools, that's the same question that they ask. So perhaps, what do you do? I mean, look to your own organization. Is there a lot of are there leadership development programs offered? How often? So ask yourself, is your company investing in this? So we see generally that people care about it. Companies care about it. Business schools, academia, it's on the rise. And then let's have a look to reality. How do leaders really do? Well, here's a survey of the World Economic Forum, and they asked, is there a leadership crisis in the world today? And just to be clear, you can see the screen. I mean, look to different continents. You have Asia, Europe, Latin America, North America, and what do they all have in common? All respondents said, yes, I agree, or I strongly agree. So it's not just a issue reserved for, I don't know, government in Europe or Africa or Latin America. No, there's a shared idea that there is a leadership crisis in the world today. And then the next question is, but what are you talking about, Johannes? What is the sector that is least trusted or most trusted? So ask yourself, is it business? Is it education, charity, government, religion, media? Think about it. Who would you pick as the most trusted? Who would you think that is the least trusted? Okay. Well, here's the bad news. Not a lot of fields do receive a passing grade. I mean, okay, just barely made it, the nonprofit and charitable organizations, but business, education, I mean, they failed. And the lowest was religious organizations. Ask yourself, are you surprised by this outcome? Perhaps ask yourself. We see from these surveys that the trust in leadership is rather low. My question for you is, why do your employees, why do they trust you? What are the reasons to engage in trusting behavior? Think about it. just to be clear, what is then trust? And then we see that there are different elements. Why do people trust leaders? Why do we trust leaders? Well, for sure, there's an element of competence. They have to know what they're doing, and we will clarify that later. What is it then that they do? Okay, but there's also other more ethical related elements like benevolence and integrity. Do employees feel that you have their best interest at heart? Do they feel that you share the same set of values and that there's a common ethical language? So it's not just being able to know or do something. There's also an ethical ground towards this whole trust in leaders. But yet, it brings us to a very interesting question. On the one hand, we see that people invest, companies invest a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. We see that the research is there. There's no doubt. No one can say that we did not make any progress. The research is there. And that leads to an interesting question. How can you explain, on the one hand, that there's willingness to invest, there's all this research, we make progress, and on the other hand, it's not always working out? How can you explain that? Well, I think there are different reasons. One of the reasons is the booming of the leadership market. It's like the flavor of the month. We did actually some research on what passes for leadership development. And I mean, honestly, you would be surprised what is sold on the leadership market as leadership development. I've seen people who work with horses, and if you climb the horse and the horse trusts you, then you're good with people. The follower will follow your leadership. Then I think, okay, but are then humans just not so smelly horses? What is the message? Or the trust games. You even have birdie leadership where you have to look in the far distance, just like a good leader. So if you practice that long distance view with a good swing, you're working on your leadership skills. So just say there's a lot of choices out there, and that makes it hard also for employers, for executives, for HR managers. Well, what should I choose if there's so many things, exotic flavors on this market? What should I choose? How do I recognize good leadership development? So the booming market is not making it easy for companies to choose, for individuals. What MBA what leadership module will I take from what kind of business school? What is also a barrier sometimes is the price tag. I mean, I have to admit, if I have to talk in front of an executive audience on leadership, quite often I'm invited even on the PowerPoint, you see a castle, and there's a price tag that comes along. So that asks the very essential question: should we not only create the captains of industry, but also the captains of society? And should we not make then this leadership development also accessible for healthcare, for NGOs, and so on? Perhaps it's a little bit too little too late. If we see you have these lobbyists who propose to start with engineering, STEM, early in the early development of children in their schooling system. Same with entrepreneurship. I come from Belgium. I teach in France, but I see there's a lot of and there are a lot of incentive. There's a lot of attention to this in the curriculum, early in the early childhood development. But what about leadership? I mean, it's so important. And when do we start thinking about, okay, we should also include that in the curriculum? The gap between research and practice. I mean, I told you that the research is out there, but then the question is, how do you get access? I mean, if you go online, and please try to Google leadership and leadership development for a moment. Just Google it. Look to the amount of hits you just have. So, and even all that academic evidence is like drinking water from a fire hydrant. It's too much. How get even the access? Sometimes you have to pay for an article, and if you have access to that article, you don't really know. Okay, but how does this allow me to see the bigger picture? And what is most important, VUCA times. Times are changing so fast. There's so unexpected things crossing our path as leader that we have to reinvent. We have to think, okay, but I learned something in school, but how does that match the needs of that situation? So let's think about it. So what would happen if I have some kind of a time machine and in one way or another, I could teleport you back, beam me up, Scotty, to 30 years ago, 40 years ago. What would be different? Well, for sure, the whole digital approach, we would not be doing this webinar, that's for sure. But also, I mean, the way you communicate with your colleagues, the leadership style. I mean, a couple of time ago, a couple of years ago, I took my time to go through old leadership manuals and look to leadership conferences in the 40s, the 50s. What were they about? Well, they were talking about obedience, strong leadership, offering structure. Well, I'm pretty sure that if I would just copy paste that content of the 1950s or 60s just to my own leadership seminars, that wouldn't work. They would say, well, what are you telling? What are you telling us? So the whole idea about the position, the role, the function of a leader, that shifted. How do you look to the workplace? How do you look to your employees? And that's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence because the industry changed, all these revolutions, society changed. So logically, if everything is moving, the way we lead, the way we influence is also following that rhythm. So just ask yourself also, I mean, we're talking about leadership. We're already 20 minutes in this seminar. Write down on a piece of paper or write down what are the leadership styles and theories that you heard of. Um, what crosses your mind? Probably you heard like there's transformational leadership, there's charismatic leadership, there's servant leadership, there's authentic leadership. Recently, they're talking about a colleague, Jim Dieter, is a leadership in courage. Owens and Heckman, humble leadership. So all these different elements, all these different constructs, and you as an executive, you as a professional, you want to take on your own leadership future into your own hands, and then you see all this complexity. There's a certain abundance, and they just ask you to navigate all this, and this is very, 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 very difficult. So let's come to the second point. Well, we have to shave this woolly sheep. We have to get rid of the fuzziness and the wooliness, just to have a better understanding. And again, let's do that with a question. You take your piece of paper and ask yourself, who's a good leader for you? And write down what are the behaviors that he or she is doing that makes him or her such a great leader. What is she doing? Normally, I would do that very interactive, and then I work with your answers. But let's just for a moment imagine I write down all these different words. Your leader is empowering you. Um, your leader has an ethical compass, a moral compass, and so on. And I think what is very important in leadership and leadership research, and also in leadership development practice, is that we come to clarity. That throughout this abundance and this complexity, we see and we try to cluster the different elements into overarching constructs in a synthesis. How can you cluster these different elements? And some scholars already did that. You have Gary Yukel, you have a colleague from me, Hannes Leroy, who really looked like, but what are these main parts? What do I have to do if I want to be an effective leader? What do I have to do? And what do I have to do to get better on these fields? Well, if you would cluster these elements, you would see that whether I explain it with competence, character, compassion, or courage, or I explain it with this leadership compass, we can see that there are different elements that you have to take into account. And no matter what leadership position you are, and no matter what situation you are, you have to be able to navigate. You have to use a compass to see, okay, this is something that I have to do. Even if you don't have all the answer, these are the questions. Again, remember my introduction. Don't expect me to give you all the answer. I would rather help training you asking the right questions. And the first important question in every kind of leadership challenge is like, what do I have to do? I have to get things done. In the literature, we call this the task-oriented leadership. Thinking about structures. Leadership is all about influence, but we cannot forget that systems and structures are often the most efficient way to influence other people. Task-oriented leadership is about being clear in your roles, in your functions, in your priorities, in your deadlines. Think about your first leadership experience. It was probably so overwhelming. Everybody was now all of the sudden coming to you. Can you do this for me? Or I have this, look, I have this urgent and important question. And then you have to decide, okay, it's urgent, but you have to wait. This is a top priority. So you have to prioritize. You have to say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to start doing this, this, and this, and we will stop doing this, this, and this. Okay? So task-oriented leadership is about role clarification. It's about planning. It's about budgeting. It's not the sexy part of leadership. I mean, I bet if I would ask who's your inspirational leadership, you would come to me with Steve Jobs, Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, who had an inspiring vision. So don't get me wrong, these people changed the world. These people had a real impact. But then some people will say, I will never become that leader. That's not something for me. So I would say start with task-oriented leadership, the not so sexy part, but it's as essential. People will not follow your big vision for the future for your department or your company if you're not reliable in the small parts. If you're not clear in that assignment and how we will do that, how do you expect them to follow you on the long run for 10, 15 years? Task-oriented leadership, the what part. The second part is who, the relation-oriented part. Who's with us? I mean, you work not only it's leadership, it's a collective. It's not only the leader that is central, it's his team, it's his department, it's the organization. So think about it. You work with people. How do you influence people? How is your emotional intelligence? How do you deal with conflict? Okay? How do you coach, mentor? This is the whole second part, the relation-oriented leadership. Third question is why? That's the hard part. That's the change-oriented. And yes, I started with a narrative explaining myself as a person, as a leader. Why do we follow you? Do you have a vision for the future that will allow people to navigate through all that change? Do you have an idea, a vision for yourself? What is it really that you want to bring to this organization, to that department? Ask yourself those questions. And then the how part, the whole ethical question. What are the main rules that we agree upon? What are the core values that holds us together? And define the game that we will play, define the steps that we will take. I am convinced that um, no leadership theory, no leadership development program can exist without paying attention also to this fourth element: what, how, why, who. And that's a compass that's different from a GPS. Consultants are very good in telling you what to do. Just do this, just do that. But then all of a sudden there's a roadblock. You have to improvise, and then the only thing your GPS say is turn around, reset. But if you're working with people, you cannot just turn around or say, oh, I'm stuck. No, you have to learn these tools as a compass to navigate. Look to the terrain. Look what is going on. Look to your map. And then you know, okay, I planned this road, but I have to deviate, but I know that I'm in the right direction. So again, these are essential components of good leadership. You cannot be effective as a leader and ignore one part. There's also one part that is absolutely, you have to be able to use them, combine them, have this overview, look to the situations, look to the challenges that are in front of you, of your team, the context, etc. But if you ask yourself these questions and you answer them in a systematic way, you have a better chance of being effective as a leader. So far I had the introduction. I tried to start the introduction with asking questions. We shaved this woolly sheep of leadership, understanding and respecting, on the one hand, the complexity, while on the other hand, coming to clarity. I mean, you have to see and you have to make sense out of this so that you can use it. Well, I think we're ready to move on to the next step, is the leadership development. Okay? So, you're all people that work in corporate life. That means that you have people that are assigned to you. You lead them. You probably we have some executives here. We have some HR directors, and you want to think about, what do I have to do to get this leadership program to turn into an effective program that I really not only develop that leader, but also develop my team, my department, my organization. So an important thing is, ask yourself that question: what is the developmental readiness? Are people ready to be developed? Okay. And normally developmental readiness, then they think about the leadership trainee, the one that is in your program, the one that you want to send, or you're that leadership trainee. But I really invite you to widen that element of leadership development readiness. And first, yes, you have the trainee. Are you willing to, is that person willing to risk and to invest? Does he really wants to learn, or just he just wants to have good grades, or he's doing this for his boss? I don't know. But is the organization ready? I mean, I've done quite some leadership projects, and then you stretch people, you strengthen people after a very good process, a very strong program. They're reinforced, they're strengthened, and then they come back to their normal environment. And then all of a sudden we see the boss is challenged, and he does not know how to deal with these strong, invigorated people. So how ready is the organization? Just to give you one example, I did a major leadership program, and it took me half a year to just make the program and make sure that I was not only talking to the CEO, but also to the board. What are the consequences of that program? How is that aligned to your vision as an institution? So they had to think about it, ask themselves, how do we see it? How will we welcome those people? How will we create buy-in from the manager that was sending their team? So this is the whole organizational developmental readiness. The trainer, is a trainer ready? I mean, for sure, if you ask a consultant if he's ready, he will say yes. And if you will ask the question, and how can you illustrate that you're ready for this job? Well, then he will probably say, well, I got these references. I trained Shell, I trained BP, I trained KBC, ING, whatever. So, but then the question is like, okay, but what does that mean? You cannot just know it all. Not every leadership challenge is something that particular trainer or professor is able to answer, because you have to have knowledge of not only what you're doing, but also measuring how you do it, and explaining why this is relevant. So not everyone is capable of doing everything. Uh, then the cohort developmental readiness. Um, you're most of the time in a team. I got participants from all over the world. I got an in-company trajectory, but perhaps you already, but there's someone in this group who's always critical. He's criticizing everyone. He's blocking the answers. So there's a low psychological safety. People will not experiment. People will not stretch themselves because they feel that they will be ridiculized. So how is the cohort, the group? What are the group dynamics? Also the program dynamics. Um, Perhaps it was just the first time that this program is running. It still had to fight it still had to define what it is, to find its own place. Perhaps not having enough budgets. So, I mean, there's a big difference between a test run and something that's been run for the third, fourth time. So just to tell you, developmental readiness has several components. And if you want to think about, I want to install an effective leadership program, or I want to follow an effective leadership program, those are the things you can look into. Okay. And then I'm trying to put pieces of the puzzle together. So actually, leadership development is something you do in 3D. It's a 3D model of leadership development. So you have the three elements, and you see, of course, competence, compassion, courage, and character, task, relation, change, and ethics. So not every program is necessarily focusing on all these elements. So position yourself. What are you doing? What are you aiming at? Then the height. I mean, there's a lot of literature differentiating what is the level you're working on. Is it just leader development? Is it a personal leadership journey? And that's okay. That's okay. But is it more with diets? Is it more in a team? Is it team leadership? Is it more collective? Is it an organization? And even some leadership scholars, I think Mark and Pless says also leadership in society, whether we call it viral or not, leadership does not end at the borders of your organization. No, you're embedded in a community. You have stakeholders. So it's not just the internal view. It's also leadership is also important to develop an external view. Who's with me? Who is my community? What are the other people that I have to connect to make this project, to make this leadership development program successful? And then the question is the depth of the leadership development. Sometimes people are just doing surface scratching. It's just knowledge. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I have to give you all this information, but I try to ask from time to time these deeper questions about you, your attitude. How do you look to the world? How do you look to the workplace? Because those things will influence your behavior. Identity. Leaderships, I'm very sorry, it's not just a microwave dinner. And that's also an important explanation why do leadership program fails. If it's just knowledge, then I can guarantee you that you will go to leadership training and your employees will, the boss is away for 3 days. And then they will say, don't you worry. Let's give it again a week. The first 3-4 days, it will be all about shared leadership. And then reality kicks in. And then we just have to wait till he goes for the next seminar. So what is different? You have to connect it with who you are. Connect it or expand it with your leadership identity. And in a pedagogical way, we create transitional selves, intermediary identities, where you try to develop that leadership identity, and by feedback, by support. So it's not only stretch, it's the balance between being stretched, demanding, and giving support, giving feedback, mentoring. So, and by doing and repeating, act like a leader, think like a leader. It's like the book of Herminia Ibarra. It's there's no secret ingredient. I know a lot of consultants think and tell you that this is the one tool, but it is exactly by putting it to practice, by being open, listening to feedback, that you can um, uh, install these new elements in a core, stable leader identity. And then you come to behavior again, like a stable behavior, not just a behavior because you went to a leadership guru who told you should do this, then this behavior will disappear in 2 or 3 weeks. So, and then the question is, what kind of leadership? I mean, I will not try to give you yet another construct, but this notion of positive leadership is connected to what I said before. Are you positive? It's about leadership confidence. It's leader identity. Yes, I'm positive. I'm sure that I can do this. I don't know all the answers. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot look in the future, but I'm rooted. I'm rooted as a leader. So yes, I'm positive. And also the question about, but what is your contribution? Um, I think in our school we say empowering change makers for a better society. So it's the question, how do you define performance? How do you define success? Is it only your success? Who's involved? Who has intrinsic value? And of course, this is connected to positive organizational behavior, but that would take us too far to go into that. And then the last part, before I stop, and I'm right on schedule, is just ending like, what is coming our way? What are the trends and evolutions? I think first element is leadership from within. We had already talent management. We had competency management. And yes, if you look to the original elements of competency management, they always said you have the visual parts of skills and knowledge. Remember my 3D model? Well, of course, it's pointing towards the non-visual elements that are as important, equally important, the self-image, the identity. So talent management went back to rediscover, hey, it's also the things that are not visual, and this continues. Leadership spirituality, leadership and purpose is what is my mission on this planet. So from skills to attitudes to identity to spirituality sometimes. So that's leadership from within. The second part is we see that the leadership image, even if in the media we still see this black and white, that it's just that one person that is responsible for everything. And yeah, it's a nice story to sell, but we see that research-wise, leadership is brought back to its human proportions. If we see what do humble leadership, servant leadership, authentic leadership have in common, they have some element of vulnerability. The leader does not know it all. He does not have to know. It's not only the strong masculine leader that we developed over 2,000 years. So we're bringing leadership back to its human proportions. And again, we're navigating through rough seas. I mean, when I talk to my executive participants, well, they're in a bumpy ride right now. They have to close departments. They have to re-engineer some plans. And again, I feel like this is not the last time that we're facing such a tremendous change initiated by COVID-19. So again, just like I said, the individual leader has to be rooted. Also, the organization has to be rooted. So there's a lot of research on purpose. How do you create purpose for a community, for a collectivity? So this is just in a nutshell the things that I can highlight in the time that has been given to me. So I only had 3/4 of an hour. So and yeah, do not make any mistake about it. This is literally yeah, hundreds of books and perhaps years of training. But I hope that I could find that balance between complexity, understanding why is it so hard. Because if there would be just one simple golden rule, then everybody would be doing the same thing. And then so I have to disappoint you. It's not. There's no microwave dinner. There are no 5 steps for effective leadership. And if you follow this book, or if you read this book, and if you follow this session, after 2 weeks, you will be a highly effective leader. No, I'm very sorry, but they are connected with these elements, which I call this 3D developmental model. So this is the moment where you can ask questions to me, and don't hesitate to come back to me. So I hope this overview helped. And of course, I miss the real life interaction, but let's see how we can communicate with each other. And I'm more than happy to further help you out, to further answer your questions.
Hello again from Access MBA Focus. Before we move to questions, I just want to launch a poll to our participants just to I think all of you can see it now, and you can type your answer. I will give you a couple of seconds, and I would like to remind you to type your questions in the question box, so our experts will take time to give you an answer. We are collecting responses, so we'll wait a couple of seconds.
Take your time to write down
Okay.
your questions.
I see that some of the participants still answering the poll, so I will leave it just for a couple of seconds more time. Okay, and I will share the results. I hope everyone can see them. What is the most important to you when choosing an executive MBA? So most of you said that faculty and curriculum are the most important thing for them. Okay. If you guys have some advices for our attendees, about what they should look as the most important thing
to select
is
an EMBA.
faculty and curriculum really the most important one.
Okay, how do you choose how do you choose faculty? How do you choose an EMBA? Well, different things. I mean, and also think about if you want to install a leadership program. I mean, who do you invite? Who do you work with? So, well, how do you choose faculty, and how do you, well, look at their backgrounds. What have they been doing? For instance, I can talk about how, as a program director and executive MBA director, how do I select my people? First of all, I want to have top researchers in the sense that they are experts on their fields, that they have done research on this. But on the other hand, it's also important, do they have corporate experience, in the sense that there's a big difference between an executive audience and just a master audience. So a big difference for me is that I'm more at the back, and I jump in when I see that there's an issue, a challenge. So, and this is connected to leadership also. I mean, we think that leadership is about stepping up, being in the spotlight, but stepping down is as important for a leader than stepping up. I think it's Heifetz and Linsky that say you have to know when you have to be on the balcony and when you have to be in the ballroom dancing on the dance floor. So that is a very important thing, is for me, like, okay, do my professors, do they have these skills to sense what's going on, to step back and step in when that's needed, and again, it's not only the research, but also what is important. I mean, a lot of you guys are thinking about doing an EMBA, an MBA, thinking about what school should I choose for my leadership development. And think about what I said about the, the levels. I mean, it's not only the things that are visual, it's not only the brochures. Try also to think about the invisual parts. Is what, how do they communicate? How do they spend time? How do they exchange with you? Because again, behind every explicit model there are implicit models. How do you see competition? How do you see performance? So it's quite often these implicit elements that are also important. So my suggestion would go out, take your time and go see them, go visit them, speak to other people that actually done that. And what kind of leadership did they develop? So what are the mental models that are important? So that would be my first gut feeling reaction.
Thank you, Johannes. I'm gonna reintroduce myself. My name is Alize, and I work with Johannes at IESEG School of Management. We've received a couple questions from you, the attendees, and if Johannes is fine with it, I will read them out loud so that he can answer.
Okay.
So, question from Colin. He asks, what is the connection between business leadership and spirituality? Do spiritual people make better leaders, and how?
It's a very very good question. It's a very challenging question, and again, I would there's a lot of research on the concept of spiritual leadership. Jody Fry is one of the most important people, but what we see right now, that the whole reflection on leadership and purpose, there's actually quite some good work of Drew Carton in ASQ, I think it's 2018, on leaders, that they also have to be architects of purpose. And again, I look to the model that I developed. and the 3D model, you have the first element, the first layer is the leader development. So you also have to ask yourself, and you go from knowledge to attitudes to identity. What is driving me? What is the thing the thing that I really want to put in the words in this world? I mean, what is the legacy that I want to leave behind? And we have in our leadership programs, we have some exercises, we have some challenges to trigger to go to these deeper layers, because again, we can think about values and stuff like that, but the question, in what context are they fed and nourished? I mean, where do you come in context with those values? And I think that spirituality is one important element. But again, we also see that some people became very like reactive to, whoa, what are you talking about? Spirituality, is that not some fuzzy floating thing? No, again, it's start with yourself. What is feeding these values, these visions you have? What is truly important? And only if you ask yourself that question, you can also think about it and what does it mean for your team? Because you are actually influencing people, and it's very important that you influence in a stable way, so that you're not totally shifting and or you're giving contradicting messages like this is important. So on the one hand you can say, yeah, take your time off, family is important, but at the same time you're sending him a message 11 p.m. in the evening expecting them that question to be answered. So you have conflicting strategies. So ask yourself, what is important for you? What is on this deeper level for you? And then how do you transmit that in your corporate life? Again, it's not only from a personal to a team or organizational, but also the other way around. Leaders are also co-creating, are also architects of purpose. Let's use that word. Are architects of purpose, and that's very important for the generation Y. You will not always convince them like, here's a tank card, and you got a Mercedes, and you got X, Y, and Z. No, they will also, and why do you want me to do that? Why should I be working for you? What is the thing that you want to do as a company? So it's very important as a leader that you're able to connect the job, the function, the work that they do on a daily basis with that bigger narrative, that they see that they're actually making a difference. Even stronger, that they're actually making a contribution. There's a lot of interest now in this meaningful work, and leaders are architects on this. And for some of you, this word spirituality will be I don't know, triggering in a negative way. But again, for others, it's more like going back to these deeper layers that influence your behavior and that influence also organizational behavior, and be consistent. Because when everything is changing, when there's so much fog or change, complexity, how do you deal with that? Is this stability? But what is our core? Like I said, I did some consulting projects with business schools on that. For instance, in a merger, when it's clear it was a merger of several hospitals in the healthcare sector, and then you see, but you also have to explain what are these deeper layers. Why are you doing the things that you're doing it? And how can you make sure that the structure that is built, that is enriching or making this possible, and not the other way around, that the structure squeezes the soul out of your organization? Okay, so very interesting question. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Johannes. There is another question that is maybe rather for me. It's from Masha. Masha is asking, how important is GPA for EMBA program and what is considered as a low GPA for EMBA. And she thanks us for the informative presentation. Well, it will depend on the school actually, Masha. There is no standard GPA requirements. It really depends on the school and on the program. I would strongly advise that you look into different EMBAs that interests you, and you just ask them what is their GPA requirements, GMAT and all. For instance, at IÉSEG, we do not require these tests. Your application will be thoroughly reviewed throughout an application file and an admission interview. So there are no tests required at IÉSEG. So that was for a question. A next question is more for Johannes. It's from Anupam, is asking how personal branding affects leadership. How personal branding affects leadership.
How personal branding? Well, if we see to the evolution of the academic research and also the leadership development programs, we see that in the past, and we often still see that coming back, that they started with more stable things like traits and then styles. For instance, Hershey and Blanchard. I mean, how do you have to be very good at task-oriented leadership and at the same time very good at relation-oriented leadership. So it's more like you do this and then the whole question came, yeah, but what about the context? What about who is in front of me? And so we see that in the evolution of the leadership theory, leadership development practice, that you have to look who's in front of you. You have to look to the context, and you cannot possibly do that if you're not willing to put yourself into the equation. Who are you to lead people? Remember my first question. Who are you to lead people? And if we see that, for instance, one important leadership current is the whole theory on authentic leadership. That's if we see from transformational leadership, how do you influence? But like I said, especially authentic leadership is asking that question. But who are you to lead people? If you are transparent, and that's now the question, how far can you be? But it has to be rooted in your life story. Remember my first leadership experience that connected me to what I'm doing right now. So yes, there you can say that influencing, because leadership is fundamentally connected with influencing people, you see that the way that we influence is different. So in the past, you could influence more using a title or a position, more power driven. But now, when you see that in a more flat structure, or just the people that you are leading, they are not accepting that anymore, and they also want to see who you are. I mean, we call this behavioral integrity. Walk your talk. If you say that something is important, we also want to see that in your life. So yes, it has to be rooted in this stable sense of self. And yes, is that a personal branding? Branding could give the tone like it's just a sales effort, but I totally agree. You cannot influence other people. You cannot change. If leadership is fundamentally connected also to change, you change a department, you change an organization, you change a team, then the question that you should ask yourself first is, and am I willing to change? And what do I have to do to get better at guiding other peoples to our change? And what is my unique contribution? So whether you call this branding, I would definitely say that it's important to make sure that there's no disconnect from these different identity layers. It's not just copy paste. You make sure that they're connected, and that the individual you that, for instance, let's talk about leadership identity. You have your individual identity, but you also have your relational identity. Just look to yourself. You're probably a son to someone, a husband to someone, a brother to someone. And also in a corporate environment, you have these different relational identities, just like you have a collective identities. So yes, it's not just branding or copy paste, but becoming aware of the richness, the diversity of these identity elements, asking yourself, am I open to question and challenge myself? So yes, and if I influence, do I try to understand, become aware? Again, I reconnect this to authentic leadership. The self-awareness part is extremely important to see, okay, apparently I influence in that way. And I think that is important, whether you call it personal branding. I think that this reflection, this consistent reflection of who you are as a leader, by self-awareness, challenging exercises, coaching, mentoring, I think that is important, and that will probably lead to a personal branding. Okay, very good question. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Johannes. Next question is from Kimberly. Kimberly is asking, what books regarding leadership would you recommend, Professor?
That's a very hard question, because basically what I've been talking about is actually the synthesis of yeah 10,000 articles and 10 million books. So what I mean, again, I'm always afraid to give one title, because then it becomes something like a Bible or a code, guideline for effective leadership. What I would suggest is that you differentiate in these four elements that I showed you: the how, what, why, and who. Um, some elements, and ask, and before you read something, ask yourself, where am I struggling with? And if you're not very sure where you're struggling with, ask your employees. They will tell you, I'm pretty sure. So ask yourself, am I more struggling on the task-oriented part? Am I, perhaps you're so warm, enthusiastic, and a bit chaotic, but then you lose people in the way you influence? Do you play this structured card of leadership, the prioritization, the process, the structure, the deadlines, the role clarification? Um, is it clear for you, this time element? Perhaps this is your point, and then I mean, then there's a whole list of books where to attend to. Or is it more the relational part? Are is it easy for you to connect to people? I mean, how do you deal with conflict? What kind of conflict? You can pretty easily see how well you're able to connect with people, and sometimes you see, oh, I'm afraid to connect with that kind of people. So is it more the relation oriented part, or is it the change? Are you afraid to draw that bigger vision? Are you afraid to inspire? And why not be charismatic? Could be the other way around than how I started, that you are very good in task-oriented leadership. You're very good in clearing, saying this is the deadline, these are the project managers, these are the capstones, but you are doubting or fearing to say, and why are we doing this? And why is this necessary for us? So same with ethics. So sorry to dodge that question in a certain way, but I mean, if there's, you can always ask me that email, and in email you can look me up. Don't get me wrong, I got for every angle, for every topic, I can give you books and articles, and so, but before, instead of giving you just one cult book, I would say try to analyze first where are my needs, and then go pick in those 4 elements the most essential one. And if you still want any more help from me, just send me an email. Okay.
Okay. So yes, indeed, it will be more effective that we reply to all questions by email. We will give you our contact information. Just maybe two last questions.
Yes.
We do have one that is it's from Olaf Fiman, and he is asking, what is the cost of the executive MBA and program mode of delivery? So I will be the one answering that question. So at IÉSEG, we do have an executive MBA, executive meaning that it's for top managers. The mode of delivery, the planning, the schedule is compatible with a professional life. So courses last 2 years. During these years, of course, you do work, and you have courses Friday and Saturday all day long, twice a month in year 1. And in year 2, it's Friday and Saturday once a month. So it's basically at maximum 2 Fridays of leave at the office. You also have 2 weeks of learning expedition. It's 1 week every year. And this is just a short week. The program mode of delivery, well, it's 2 years. You have 4 semesters, and you have courses, many team building, team working. You have to work on projects and groups, and in the end, you have to produce a professional consulting thesis. Which is a very important work on the program. And last but not least, our executive MBA is in Paris La Défense. And it is taught in English, but also in French, which means that you have to understand both languages. If you do not understand a single word of French, that will be complicated, because the courses are given, let's say, more than 50% in English, but all the course materials is in English. So you have to understand both languages. So maybe one last question. We have a question from Shanize, who is asking, what are the things I have to prepare for when planning to take an MBA if I am a psychology graduate, and how does psychology apply to leadership and business? So let me say it again. What are the things I have to prepare for when planning to take an MBA? And how does it apply to leadership?
I mean, okay, how do you prepare for an EMBA? I mean, first of all, let's be clear on why would you start an EMBA, and I mean, those are also, if I do a lot of the interviews or we see the files, also, so ask yourself on why is this the right time? Why is this the right moment for you? Because you speak about an MBA and EMBA, so the ambition is to step up on the corporate or the organizational ladder, and you want to influence in another way. So ask yourself, what is making you doing that? Why would you make that huge investment? Because we connected with the previous question is also the investment that you make. So I would say, first of all, look back. I mean, look back to your leadership, because you want to connect it to your leadership. It's often at the moment that you feel insecure that you are reluctant to step up, and therefore you're not grasping all the opportunities that are offered to you in your present organization, or you are not realizing your potential. So but ask yourself, why do I want to invest so much time and effort? What's the bigger picture? What's the bigger dream? Analyze to that situation, the situation where you did not be able to step up. ask yourself, but perhaps it's you are in a certain company and you feel like I'm not really aligned with the leadership vision that I see here, and I want to do it differently. So because that's also important, is an EMBA is also either allowing you to quit that organization, but also if that's possible, it also gives you the tools to explore and to influence in another way. So it's very interesting, and we suggest that that see how you can connect it with your present job, because again, it's connected to not only leadership behavior, but it's also internalizing these elements, and you can only do that by practice, risking yourself, like we will stretch you during a seminar, and but you have to continue to stretch yourself in your daily life. And then I think after an EMBA 1 or 2 years, this becomes your second nature. In the beginning, if I see my participants even having a lot of corporate experience, they feel like, oh, I'm afraid to risk myself. But you get so used to get out of your comfort zone. It's like you develop a version not 1.0, 2.0, but 30.0. So and is that connected with psychology? Yes. Well, leadership as a construct is on the crossroads of many disciplines, and yes, psychology is one element there, and I think it's also helpful. So if you already have that background, I mean, you can definitely use this as a strength, because you will go beyond gut feeling reactions. You already have this habit to reflect upon things, on human behavior, human motivations, in a more systematic way, having also the background to use this. So I mean, definitely that would be a strength, on this whole relation oriented part. So, and also broader for an EMBA. But again, take a step back, and ask yourself, what is it that I see myself doing in 10, 15 years? Ask yourself that question. What do I bring to the class? Not only knowledge, expertise, but also fears. I mean, sometimes it helps a professor, a leadership instructor, when somebody is aware. If we have to create awareness, that's another step. But then the question is, how do you learn? So I think those are the things that, next to the organizational preparation, get your team ready, get your boss ready, get your family ready, get your bank account ready, because it's also an investment. There's the whole mental readiness. So, but I think those are very important questions you're asking yourself, and that process of dealing and struggling and maturing, make sure that you're mentally ready before you start with an EMBA. So very good question. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you all.
If there are no more questions,
Thank you one more time for taking time to answer the questions. And for those of you whose questions were not answered, we will send you the answers by email soon. You will also receive a link with the recording of the whole webinar, so you can rewatch it. Once again, I want to thank to our wonderful presenters for this informative presentation.
Thank you,
And on
Johannes.
behalf of the MBA Focus team, we wish you good luck in your academic journey and hope to meet you again soon. Goodbye to everyone.
okay, also
Thank
from
you.
my side, a very warm thank you to my colleague Alize, and also to the
Thank you.
Advent team for the professional guidance, and also all the people that are connected through this webinar throughout the world. I can see you sitting in your own home office, in your own home, and it's really a pleasure and a privilege to be with you in this last hour and a half. I really hope that our paths can come cross again. So all the best in your career, all the best with your individual and collective leadership journey. It was a real pleasure having you. Take care.
It was a pleasure. Goodbye.